Shinpachi, my heart still aches when I think back to that battle in Koshu Katsunuma. The battle was already tilted against us, but I fought to defend my loyalty to the shogunate. I never knew that it would eventually lead to a dark turn in my destiny. Sir, the battle in Koshu was an unavoidable choice for us. But why did you make the decision to leave Edo? This was because Edo Castle had been opened bloodlessly and the defeat of the shogunate had become clear. It was only a matter of time before he would be captured by the new government forces, even if he remained in Edo. Establishing a new base of resistance in Koshu seemed like the last hope. You did so out of loyalty to the continuation of the Shinsengumi and to the shogunate. However, I heard that you were subsequently captured. How did you feel at that moment? When I was captured, I honestly felt it was all over. I disguised myself as a peasant and tried to escape, but I was discovered. Still, I was determined to fulfill my responsibilities as director of the Shinsengumi to the very end. We have learned a great deal from that determination of the Director General. What did you think and how did you spend your time during your detention in Itabashi? During his detention, he spent much of his time reflecting and asking himself questions. Was my action as a member of the Shinsengumi really against the times? Or was I upholding my pride as a samurai? But above all, I was concerned for the safety and future of my comrades. Mr. Director, your deep contemplation and compassion for your comrades is truly admirable. And you were finally put on trial and sentenced to death. It was not a trial, just a formality. For the new government, it was all about processing me quickly. When I was sentenced to death, I was already prepared. I decided to fulfill my last role as a samurai if it would help facilitate the transition to a new era. We have a great deal to learn from your determination. I heard that on the day of his beheading, he met his moment of death quietly. His steps were heavy, but his heart was surprisingly calm. He had no regrets about his loyalty to the ideals of the Shinsengumi and to the shogunate. He only hoped that his surviving comrades would survive in the new era. We will never forget the strong will and wishes of the bureau chief. The director's wishes will be the power to carry on the spirit of the Shinsengumi. Sir, that day in Itabashi, why did the new government push us, so hard? There was more behind it than just the activities of the Shinsengumi. Shinpachi, tell me more specifically what that is. I understand that we were not just a security organization, but what is the specific reason for that? Director General, the Shinsengumi went beyond police activities in Kyoto and were under the direct influence of the shogunate. As such, they were seen as particularly dangerous to the new government, as they represented the power of the Tokugawa family. So we were considered the last bastion of the shogunate. But why so thoroughly? Director General, the new government aimed to take complete control of power. It was necessary to show the transition to a new era both internally and externally by eliminating the old shogunate's power, especially its symbolic presence, which was an obstacle to this goal. So with my life, you are marking the beginning of a new era. But then again, why would I go to such? Director, you led the Shinsengumi and on many occasions moved at the will of the shogunate and suppressed opposing forces. Your actions were seen by the new government as contrary to the ideals of the Meiji Restoration. Shinpachi, but we were simply following orders. Besides, the Shinsengumi was a necessary organization to protect the security of Kyoto. That is certainly true, but rather than understand that, the new government preferred to eliminate you as a symbol of the old regime and accelerate the transition to the new regime. Is it because, in other words, we have failed to adapt to the new era? Yes, it was. And it was not just a problem for the Shinsengumi, but a challenge faced by many samurai in the final days of the Tokugawa shogunate. Times changed, and so did the required roles. So you failed to adapt to the changing times and as a result, you were sacrificed. But then again, the new government's approach was too. Sir, the new government's approach was indeed harsh, but it was also an inevitable choice to establish a new order. For them, eradicating the old power was a means of preventing chaos. Indeed, the transition to a new era was necessary. But many lives were lost in the process. Was this really justified? It is a difficult question. However, history is always told by the victors. The new government won, and a new Japan was built as a result. This is the course of history. Shinpachi, I am still proud of the way we live and fight as the Shinsengumi. Even if it is against the current of the times. Sir, that pride is shared by all of us in the Shinsengumi. And it is because of that pride that our story is still being told today. You're right, Shinpachi. Our story is not just a story of losers. It is a story that represents an era. Yes, Mr. Director. And the story will continue to be a source of inspiration and learning for many in the future. I hope that our living testimonies will be passed on to a new generation of people. Shinpachi, is it true, then, that after I was beheaded, my head was sent to Kyoto? Yes, Mr. Director. It is true. Your head was sent to Kyoto to be exposed. It was an act of the new government's complete elimination of you and a demonstration of its authority. Well, that is a painful story. But did it enable the new government to consolidate its position? Yes, Mr. Director. Your execution and subsequent treatment was an important event that demonstrated the authority of the new government both at home and abroad. It allowed the new government to send a stern message to the old shogunate forces. Shinpachi, hearing that makes me feel that my death had some meaning. I see that our end was a new beginning. Yes, Mr. Director. Your death symbolizes the dawn of a new era, and its significance is immeasurable. We must continue to live with that fact in our hearts. Shinpachi, thank you. Keep telling our story. I hope the spirit of the Shinsengumi will live on through the ages. Yes, Mr. Director. Our story will continue to be told. Your will, the spirit of the Shinsengumi, we will keep alive. Shinpachi, what do you think about the impact my beheading had? It is said that for the new government, that was an important step in eliminating the symbols of the old shogunate power. Director, your beheading was certainly of great significance to the new government. It was a symbolic act by which the new government established its own authority and completely cut off the influence of the old shogunate. That would be true, but for us in the Shinsengumi, that day meant the end of our organization. With my disappearance, the Shinsengumi was effectively driven to disbandment. That is true. However, the death of the bureau chief did not end the spirit of the Shinsengumi. We, the survivors, took over that spirit and made it our strength to live in a new era. Shinpachi, I am relieved to hear that. However, I think, my death may have also triggered an appreciation of the Shinsengumi's activities. Yes, after the death of the bureau chief, the actions and raison d'etre of the Shinsengumi have been re-evaluated. Particularly from an academic perspective, research is being conducted on how our actions were in response to the demands of the times. The demands of the times. We were sometimes forced to take actions that could be considered outrageous, but it was all for the sake of maintaining public order and loyalty to the shogunate. Sir, it is undeniable that our actions have been harsh at times, but it is important to understand the context in which they came from. The Shinsengumi should not be seen as mere dogs of the shogunate, but as symbols of an era. That's right. The Shinsengumi pursued certain ideals while making many sacrifices. That point is often overlooked. That is certainly true. Our actions were sometimes misleading, but there was always a deeper reason for them. Shinpachi, another effect of my beheading was the opposition of some to the establishment of the new government's authority. I hear that execution sparked a new resistance among the old shogunate faction and disgruntled samurai. That point is very important. While the execution of the Director General certainly demonstrated the authority of the new government, it also created forces that opposed it. This, in part, resulted in further turmoil. I see, so while the new government was trying to establish its authority, its methods could have created further problems. Yes, Director General. The new government needed to achieve stability by eliminating the old shogunate forces, but the hard-line measures taken in the process sometimes created an element of instability. Such contradictions always exist in times of change. However, how they are overcome will shape the subsequent era. The director is right. History always proceeds in such complex elements. Our role is in what we choose and how we act within them. Indeed it is. We are faced with a choice, and how that choice will be evaluated by future generations is unknown. But the fact remains that our actions will be remembered as part of the times. Yes, Mr. Director. And regardless of how our actions are evaluated, they will certainly have some impact on future generations. Shinpachi, the fact that my death is remembered as an event that symbolizes the dawn of a new era is evidence that our actions are recognized as part of history. You are right, Director. Your death has etched its name in history as heralding the beginning of a new era and symbolizing the end of the Shinsengumi. Hearing this, I can feel that my life was not in vain. Shinpachi, please continue to pass on the spirit of the Shinsengumi to the next generation. Yes, Mr. Director. Our experiences and lessons learned will be passed on to many more. Our story will live on through the spirit of the Shinsengumi. Shinpachi, as my beheading draws nearer, many thoughts are crossing my mind. I believed that everything we did was for loyalty to the shogunate and to protect our people, but to think that it would end like this. Sir, I share that loyalty. However, I have also heard accusations that at times our means have been too harsh. How do you feel about that, Director? Shinpachi, it is true that our methods were sometimes harsh. But in those times of turmoil, it seemed the most effective means. Of course, nowadays, I have my doubts about that method. I feel the same way about that question. However, if the director had chosen a different approach, more innocent people might have been killed. What the times demanded of us was the rigor of a quick decision. Maybe so. However, that harshness ultimately led us, the Shinsengumi, and me to this position. Shinpachi, how do you evaluate my decision? Sir, I respect your decision. Besides, it is also true that our actions were supported by many of the people of Kyoto, albeit with some criticism. I see, it was because of that support that we were able to keep fighting until the end. Yes, Mr. Director. And our fight was not just about violence, but about maintaining some kind of order. And there were people who understood that. I'm a little relieved to hear that. But, Shinpachi, what I regret most is that I could not save more of my comrades. Mr. Director, I understand your sentiments. However, without the Director General, many more of our comrades might have died in vain. The presence of the Director General saved many lives. Shinpachi, I feel a little lighter after hearing those words. But if I could turn back time, I would also be more inclined to look for another way. Director, that is what everyone feels. But there is no if in history. We did the best we could at the time. That's right, there is no if in history. We did the best we could in the course of the times. That was our responsibility as warriors and as human beings. The bureau chief, and his sense of responsibility, made him an iconic figure in the Shinsengumi. Many people were looking for a leader with a strong will like the bureau chief. Shinpachi, thank you. If my will has some meaning beyond the ages, it is a great help to me. Sir, I believe that our discussion will help us to understand in depth how our actions were in face of the times. That's for sure. Shinpachi, let me ask you one last question. Do you think that our actions, especially the severe security operations in Kyoto, were in response to the demands of the times? Sir, I agree. Kyoto was very unstable at the time, and without our activities, there would likely have been more widespread chaos. We took action where it was needed and where it was needed. Your words give me a little more confidence in my decision. Shinpachi, I hope you will continue to read the trends of the times and evaluate our actions correctly. Yes, Mr. Director. Our actions are in response to the needs of the times, and it is our mission to continue to do right by that spirit. Shinpachi, what do you think this event, which coincided with the end of our era and the beginning of a new era, meant to the new Meiji government? Sir, your beheading was an important action for the new government to establish its authority and accelerate the transition to the new era of order by removing the symbolic leader of the old shogunate forces. I can't begin to measure the impact of that action on society. How do you think it was received by the populace? Many of the people recognized the authority of the new government, but also had sympathy for the samurai of the old shogunate, such as yourself. Your beheading was perceived by some as a sadness, and it also triggered suspicion toward the new government. Okay, that may have been an unexpected reaction for the new government. It certainly would be. Furthermore, from a cultural perspective, the end of our Shinsengumi has influenced much literature and art as a symbolic story of the turbulent period at the end of the Edo period. Does that mean that our actions have created a cultural legacy, not just a historical event? That is exactly right. And from an economic perspective, the establishment of the new government's power meant the promotion of capitalism and the Industrial Revolution, which brought about major changes in Japan's economic structure. So the economic system of the old shogunate era has changed, and new commercial activities have become more active. Yes, and that change will also lay the groundwork for Japan to adapt to international competition. The transition to the new era was painful, but it changed Japan dramatically. It could be said that the death of the Director General marked the beginning of a new era, but it was also the process of Japan beginning to move forward as a modern nation. Shinpachi, it's a relief in a way that our existence has become the foundation of a new era. Indeed, it is. Our experience also serves as a lesson for the challenges facing the Japanese in the new era. Shinpachi, how do you think the social changes brought about by this event actually affected the policies of the new government? Through our execution, the new government shifted away from the opaque use of power and shifted its emphasis toward governing based on law and order. This was important to establish the legitimacy of the new government vis-a-vis the people. The transition to the rule of law was an essential element in Japan's subsequent development. That is correct. The case also served as a model case as to how a new government can eliminate the symbols of the old regime and build a new one. The establishment of authority by the new government sent a strong message both domestically and internationally. Yes, it has enabled Japan to establish a new position in the international community. Shinpachi, so the end of our era has opened the door to a new world. Yes, sir, Director General. Our actions and their consequences play an important role in the history of Japan. Shinpachi, history is sometimes harsh, but we can only hope that our presence will have some meaning for future generations. I deeply agree with the director's words. I hope that our experience will serve as a valuable lesson for future generations. Shinpachi, we have fought many battles together, but I feel that it is only at this place and at this time that we have had the opportunity to truly speak our minds. Mr. Director, I feel the same way. I would like to know now how the director felt in his last moments in Itabashi. To be honest, at the time, I felt a mixture of relief that it was all over and disappointment at the unfinished work. But above all, what I felt was my responsibility to the newly elected government. To hear that the bureau chief was thinking of the Shinsengumi even in his last days, it brings up an indescribable feeling. Shinpachi, I still sometimes wonder what I could have done differently at that time. In particular, I think there wasn't enough consideration for the citizens of. Sir, I understand your sentiments, but there were limits to what we could have done in that time and under those circumstances. Yes, we can't resist some of the trends of the times. But we could have been more flexible in not settling for that. That reflection by the bureau chief is a very important lesson for us today. However, the director's leadership of the Shinsengumi helped many young people find a way to live proudly. Shinpachi, your words always save the day. If our actions have had even the slightest influence on the times, it is because of you. Director, we also learned under him, and what we have learned under him has shaped us into what we are today. That is why we respect and try to understand the director's choices. Shinpachi, on that day when I was beheaded, I really wanted to tell you more. Especially about the future of the Shinsengumi. Director General, as for its future, we will take over. We pledge to carry on the director's will and keep the spirit of the Shinsengumi alive in the new era. I'm glad to hear it. Shinpachi, in my last moments, I will tell you the truth. Actually, in my last moments, I was free from all fear and felt a deep peace. Sir, I would take some comfort if that peace of mind was the last solace for the director. Shinpachi, our paths may be different, but the spirit of the Shinsengumi will live on forever. I am proud of what we have built, no matter how it is evaluated. Sir, your strong conviction has guided us all, and the name of the Shinsengumi will continue to be passed down through history. Shinpachi, our conversation does not end here today. The spirit of the Shinsengumi will continue to live on in many more people and in new forms. Director, our bond will endure the test of time. The path we have taken together will be a great light for the future. Shinpachi, it is because of you and your team that I was able to leave my mark on history. Thank you. Sir, it was an honor to fight with you as well. And I want to thank all of our readers. Thank you for listening to us. Dear readers, thank you very much for your interest in listening to the stories of our times. We hope that the spirit of the Shinsengumi will live on in your hearts and minds. Thank you for watching. How was it? This video is automatically generated by AI. I'm not quite there yet, but if you'd like to subscribe to my channel, I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you for watching. What did you think? This video was automatically generated by AI. We still have many areas to improve, but if you don't mind, we would be grateful if you could subscribe to our channel.